It's time for the Margin Matters Minute with Money Man Jason Brown.
All right, welcome back to another edition of the Margin Matters Minute. My name is Jason Brown. Thank you so much for joining me today. Today, we're talking about retirement, and more specifically, is it possible? Is it a myth? Can you do it? Can I do it? Can we do it? Now, what's been happening is I've actually had a lot of people around me retire. My dad just retired. Another close friend retired. And I've been thinking a lot about retirement just because of them. And also, I've been, of course, anytime I turn on anything that has to do with personal finance or money, I get all the retirement ads. Are you ready? Do you have enough saved for retirement? You've heard the commercials, you've seen the ads, you've probably read blogs. Do you have enough money saved for retirement? So what happened was I just saw a show on Netflix. Netflix just started a new series called Money Explained, and it's a documentary series with several episodes. I want to say they have 5 or 6 episodes, and each episode covers a different topic of money. And one of the topics is about retirement. And I'm gonna kind of break down that episode for you guys in just a second. But before I get into that, I want to share a little more about my dad. He just retired. And I want to tell you one other story about a former boss of mine who was actually forced into retirement. And those are stories that have really kind of resonated with me. So my dad just retired. He's a workaholic. He worked his whole entire life. And he retired at age 70. He just turned 70 years old, and he just retired a few months ago. And I was actually absolutely shocked that he retired because I thought he was going to just never stop working. But I'm still kind of having a hard time believing the reality of that. But I've actually been interviewing my dad for a series of retirement talks that for this channel. So you guys can check those out. I'll link those below. He's been very candid and transparent with me on all the questions that I've been asking. And it's actually been a really good educational experience for me to learn everything that he's done to prepare to retire. Now, his was even more challenged because he was trying to retire during a pandemic, which I'm pretty sure he wasn't planning to do. So that was just an extra wrinkle into his plan. Now, real quick, I want to tell you this other story that really, really affected me. This was at a previous job I had, and our boss was actually forced into retirement. But the thing is that she was almost 80 years old. So what happened was she was not ready to retire. She was not financially prepared, didn't have enough money saved up, what have you. And she was still working and was trying to work for, I want to say, 2 or 3 more years, maybe. But what happened was her health started failing. And her last year there, her health rapidly declined. It was really sad to see. It was a sad situation. And she got up in front of us, and she had tears flowing down her face. And she had to basically announce her retirement before she wanted to. She did not retire on her own terms. So I don't know what her financial situation was, but I was told that she was not financially ready to retire. And I had a hard time believing how could that be possible for someone who was almost 80 years old. I guess she wasn't really, maybe she got some bad money advice in her past or what have you. But that was something that always stuck with me because when I saw that happen to her, I immediately said to myself, I do not ever want to be in that position to be forced to retire or to have to work till I'm 80 years old. So now let's talk about this show. This show on Netflix was very, very sobering and very depressing to watch. And they're only about 20 or 30 minute episodes, so you guys can check them out on Netflix. I'll actually link that in the description below if you have Netflix and you want to watch it. It's worth watching. It was eye-opening. So I'm going to go through, I actually just wrote down some highlights of the show that I want to share with you guys. So the first thing that it discussed was it talks about most people will not be able to maintain their standard of living into retirement. Most people will sink from a middle class life to near poverty experience in retirement. So this was something that they talked about. Basically people aren't going to have enough money saved up, and they went over a lot of statistics that I'll share here in a second. But one of the things they talked about was the 401k, where the companies have the 401k retirement plan. And unfortunately, only about 59% of American workers even have access to a 401k. You see the graphic here, I'll put that up for you. So that's not good. If you're trying to retire, you're looking for a retirement plan, and what is that? 41% of employers don't even offer any type of retirement plan. So you might be working at a company and you have no opportunity to save or invest through the company. Now you'll have to go out and do that on your own, of course, and you'll have to do your own research and maybe hire a financial planner. But that's something that you're going to have to take into account. So another thing that this show talked about on Netflix was to retire comfortably. This was the benchmark that they gave. To retire comfortably, middle-class Americans should save at least $1 million. Now that's always a big debate. How much money do I need to save? 1 million, 5 million, 2 million, no one really knows. But it's really based on your age, and I guess, or the age meaning when you want to retire and how many years you plan to live retired. So obviously the earlier you retire, the more money you would need to save up. Someone who wants to retire at 50 versus a 70-year-old, there's going to be a huge disparity in money. But this show is telling me that we need at least $1 million to retire. Now, this is where it starts getting, some of these statistics start getting really depressing. So the next one, they talked about 25% of the American workforce does not have any retirement savings. They have $0. 25% of American workers have no retirement savings. So that's where you start, whoa. Now this is really, I'm a Gen Xer and the millennial generation. This is really those generations and below are the ones that are really going to need to pay attention to this if they want to ever have a chance to retire. So the next statistic they threw out there was 92% of Americans are not meeting their retirement savings target. Well, that shouldn't surprise anyone based on the last statistics I wrote. So even if you are saving like me, I've been saving, obviously not enough. I'll tell you my story in a second, but most people aren't saving enough. Almost all of us, 92% aren't saving enough to reach that $1 million benchmark that they're talking about. Now, the next one, they talked about Social Security. A lot of people are going to draw Social Security when they reach a certain age. Social Security replaces only about 40% of your pre-retirement earnings. So you got to plan for that. You have to realize that it's not going to be a complete replacement of your salary, that you are going to have to change your lifestyle and your budget and your expenses if you plan to solely live on Social Security. So it's not going to be that much from what I understand. Now the next one, 60% of American workforce earns less than $50,000 a year. So this is where we're going to go into how in the world do you save up $1 million to retire? Most of the American workforce earns less than $50,000 a year, and even more specifically, I researched this a little further, half of American workers make less than $35,000 a year, which obviously the less you make, the harder it is to save money, to invest money, to reach that $1 million benchmark, to retire. So this is the problem that we have, right? Only 9% of Americans make $100,000 a year or more. So a very small percentage of Americans are making a six-figure salary or higher that would have a better opportunity to save for retirement. So this is the biggest problem that I see, is that how in the world are you supposed to save to retire when you're making $30,000, $40,000, $50,000 a year, and you might have a family, wife and kids to support, or other people to support. So this is where it gets extremely challenging. Now, the next one, Oh yeah, no surprise. Most of us will never be able to save $1 million. Like I said, this show was very depressing. And then, of course, the biggest fear when you get older and when you get to the retirement age, the biggest fear is outliving your money, right? So you've whatever money you've saved up, the fear is that you might have 10 years of money saved up, and then you live 20 or 30 years longer, right? So you've outlived your money. That's a tremendous fear and anxiety for the retirement age individual. So how do we combat this? It's very difficult. So let me tell you my story real quick. Is that I was working and 2008, 2009, that the Great Recession hit, right? So that was the last time our economy crashed before the pandemic. So 2009, I was laid off from my job. I was on unemployment for a while. I was stringing together a bunch of part-time jobs, freelance, independent contractor type work. And I want to say for almost 10 years, I was either underemployed or working part-time or what have you. Basically, I lost 10 years of time of investing into a retirement program. So any jobs that I had did not offer 401ks or any type of stock programs or anything like that. Most of the jobs I had during that time, I didn't have any benefits at all. No health insurance, nothing. I just got paid an hourly rate. So I got way behind. So I've been working really hard to try to catch up. So the sobering thought for me is now I'm actually 45 years old. I started working the day I turned 15. So when I start thinking about that, I realized, well, shoot, I've been in the workforce for 30 years, and I certainly don't want to be doing this for 30 more years. I feel like I'm not even at the halfway point. I don't want to be working till I'm 75 years old. But how in the world, would I be able to retire in 10 years? If I want to retire at 55 or even 60, if I want to retire in 10 or 15 years, how in the world am I supposed to do this? Now, I will share, I've been very, very aggressive in saving and investing. Last year was the first year that I was able to max out my retirement options that the government allows you up to $19,500, and that changes every year. So you got to check that to invest into a company-sponsored 401k or a stock plan. I know my company is employee-owned, so you also have the opportunity to buy company stock or invest into a company-owned 401k. So last year was the first year I was fortunate enough to max that out, but can I do that for 10, 15 years? I don't know. It will be extremely challenging. I have a wife and 2 kids to support, so it's you never really know what life is going to hit you with. So another thing I thought of, I read this other article, and it said 85% of American workers are unhappy with their jobs. Basically, 85% of people hate their jobs, which I was like, wow. So how do you get to retirement when most people hate their jobs, they can't save, or they're not making enough money to save? How in the world are we supposed to save money to retire? Is this even possible? Can you do it? How do we do it? So a couple other statistics that the show from Netflix, the retirement documentary, threw out there was they talked about the benchmarks, right? Actually, this wasn't on the show. This was I researched this on my own. But I'll throw these graphics up there. The benchmarks, this is what I was referring to earlier, where I lost that gap of time. So the benchmarks, you'll see, I'll put a couple of them up here, is where you look at your age. So, right, so for me, I'm 45 years old, so it says, by age 45, you should have saved this much money. And I think for me, it's like $400,000, right? Or sometimes you'll see a calculator or a timetable, and it says you should have X amount of salary, say 4 times your salary or 6 times your salary, whatever it is. So you'll see some of those calculations as well. So for me, it's, okay, I need $400,000 at my age now, but I don't even think I have a fourth of that. Or, I might have 150,000. I don't even know. It's a very low amount. It's nowhere close to that benchmark. So I start getting a little anxiety and a little concern. I'm like, I'm not even near this. So what do I do? How do I catch up? Is it even possible to catch up? So a couple of the other This other one I'll show you real quick from the show. They showed this graphic, and they're talking about the huge gap in, they call it retirement spending. They call it a retirement spending gap, and you'll see the years there. I think they'll show the years of the gap. So what they're showing here is when you get time to retire, there's a huge gap. And actually, what they're talking about is the savings. Like there's going to be a huge savings gap. Most of us aren't going to have enough money to retire, or if we do retire, we won't have enough money to, I guess, live comfortably, if you will, because this show was predicting that most people who retire will fall into poverty. So again, like I said, the show is very depressing. It's worth watching though, because it was a very eye-opening to me. It was very, I took it as encouragement. It's like, hey, I don't want this to happen to me. What can I do to, circumvent this? What can I do to not let this happen, right, to me or to anybody else that I love or care about? So I guess the takeaway from all this is, how do we do this? Put it in the comments if you have any ideas to your retirement thoughts or goals, or what is your strategy? Because there's so much information out there about the topic of retirement, and you'll see so many different ideas and opinions of what you can do and how you can do it and when you can do it. And there's different years of claiming your Social Security. My dad waited till he was 70, which is the longest you can wait, because supposedly the longer you wait, the more money you can draw. So my dad wanted to wait to the furthest possible point so he could get the most money that he could. So he was actually able to wait till he was 70 years old. So there's a lots of things to take into consideration when you get to that age of retirement. So I just wanted to share these thoughts and ideas with you. Check out the show on Netflix. Put in the comments below of your ideas or strategies or tips or advice. I can certainly use some advice, but my goal just moving forward is I'm going to try to be wise with my money. We're going to try to save an emergency fund, continue to fully max out my employee-sponsored retirement plan, God willing that we can, just be aggressive, and we'll see where we're at in, 10 to 15 years, but just, continue to seek out wise counsel, maybe a financial counselor or coach or somebody that you might know that is financially savvy. I have a mentor that I bounce ideas off of as well. So just, these are some of my ideas. Share what you think. I'll link the show below. You can check it out for yourself, and I would love to hear your comments. So until next time, this is Jason Brown saying thanks so much for your support. If you'd like to check out my website, it's yourmarginmatters.com. And there you can find information about the personal finance book I wrote, Margin Matters, as well as all my blogs and videos and other endeavors that I'm working on to share the news about personal finance. So this is Jason Brown saying thanks so much for watching. And until next time, remember my favorite saying, it's not the amount of money you make, but the margin that matters the most. See you next time.